Okay, so I'll go ahead and introduce the next session, which will run for the next hour. And just to say thank you so much to Alejandra, Eva, and Ricardo. It was really fantastic to hear about the different approaches of Manufactura Tabacchi and La Friche Belle de Mai. Great to see the kind of granular detail and hear from people who have been working on those projects for a long time. So just a quick introduction to myself. My name is Rhianon. I am a research fellow at Central St Martin's, University of the Arts London. We, as University of the Arts, Central St Martin's, we are located in the Granary building, which is actually within one of the advanced case studies for the T-Factor project. So since October, I've been involved in the research of the King's Cross area as an advanced case study, looking at meanwhile strategies, but also the kind of wider regeneration project. And now our focus is moving over to Euston, which borders King's Cross. We're in a fairly unique position within T-Factor in that our advanced case study site and our pilot site are so close together. And so there are common stakeholders between the two sites, which is very interesting. I'm also a practitioner, an architect working in the area as well, on projects that encompass large-scale collaboration across multiple stakeholders, council, mayor, local residents. So the focus of the next hour will be around the effective implementation of temporary uses through the lenses of outreach, engagement, and partnerships. We'll be looking closely at the differing ways in which outreach with local citizens and other stakeholders can take place and how this process can uncover challenges in the area that people may be facing. And in turn, this process informing certain aspects of the meanwhile projects themselves. We'll also be hearing about how engagement can be designed with and around a specific group of citizens, considering how this process can enable people to actively contribute to the shaping of their environments through meanwhile, and also how that meanwhile can lead to strategies within the kind of broader master plan longer term as well. And then we'll consider the possibilities for engaging through partnerships at scale, across both public and private stakeholders, and the roles that these different partners can take, and in turn their contribution to shaping the spaces and the strategies of that space together. So we're joined by three speakers. Firstly, we have Eva from TU Dortmund, who will speak to us about neighbourhood engagement to address vulnerability through the regeneration strategy in Dortmund. Eva will provide detail on the specific approaches and tools used in the context of Café U-Jack, in this instance used particularly to address issues of unemployment and exclusion in the area. Then we will move on to Patrycja from the 𝐓𝐞𝐻 team in Poland, who will talk about the initiatives that were particularly aimed at youth engagement and the active contribution that this can play in the creation of a new identity for the place. And then lastly, we'll be joined by Edward from Pali Pali, which is the umbrella organisation of CU in Brussels. Edward will explain the multi-stakeholder strategy of engagement and collaboration at CU in Brussels, one of the largest temporary use initiatives in Europe, a project which was planned and carried out in close collaboration with the regional government. So the speakers will have 10 minutes each, and then we'll have hopefully about 10-15 minutes at the end for questions. Feel free to write the questions in the chat, or just unmute yourself at the end and feel free to chip in. So over to Eva.
Thank you very much, Rhianon. I'm starting the presentation. I hope that everyone can see it. Okay, so I'm going to present a case where meanwhile use turned a vacant pizzeria into a very colorful neighborhood cafe. And where are we at? So just to give you a little overview, We are in Dortmund here, and I highlighted Amsterdam and Brussels for you to see where it is located. It's one of the major cities in the Ruhr region, or also called Metropolis Ruhr, which altogether, all the major cities have 5 million inhabitants. And probably you know that they have all a rich history, or this whole region has a rich history in coal mining and the iron and steel industry. And the region went through a major structural change over the last decades, and it's still ongoing. So it's a bit of a similar situation like we have in Florence and Marseille. So what we did within T-Factor is that we worked on an advanced case study about the regeneration plan, which was called Dortmund EU and the Union Quarter. Or previously, the original master plan was called Dortmund EU and Rheinische Straße. And what you see here in the middle is a picture of the Dortmund EU. Just like in Marseille, it has also been a case of a culture of capital in Europe back in 2010 when the master plan started. So this was an old fermentation tower of an old brewery, which has been turned into a center for the arts and culture. So this was the major part also of the regeneration process, Rheinische Straße, Dortmund EU. And then we also investigated 4 of the meanwhile uses that were somehow strategized partly in the regeneration plan. And this is Café U-Jack, which I will talk about later, the Blue House, Project Garden, and Skate Park Utopia. And of course, you can read about all this in our advanced cases portfolio, which was introduced in the beginning. But also Alejandra, my colleague, and me, we produced a working paper, Dortmund EU and Union Quarter, the role of meanwhile uses in urban regeneration, which also looks a bit more into detail of the culture of German urban planning and the role of meanwhile uses within that. So where are we in Dortmund? This regeneration area is very close to the city center. You can see the city center here to the right. We have the Dortmund EU located here, and then the whole regeneration area is characterized by this big street here, which also gave the master plan its name. That's Rheinische Straße. And the meanwhile uses are located here. That's the Blue House, the Café U-Jack, and the Project Garden, so all on the same street. And we have this bridge here in between, which is like a cut into the whole master plan area. And this somehow has an effect, which I will talk about later on. So you can see that there are also a lot of train tracks here that divide the area of the regeneration, and you have the main yeah, well, that's the part of the city center here. Okay, so after 10 years of regeneration, this is what the area looks today. So that is the area around the Café U-Jack. So when you are directly in front of the cafe, that is what you can see here. And this is the old administration building of the Union Steel Company, which makes up a lot of this whole area here. So this is all an abandoned industrial site. And this thing here, that's the administration building, and here is Café U-Jack. So that so far for the context of this cafe. So why was there a need of revitalization for the quarter? There was a lack of identity and maintenance. So buildings were deteriorating. There was a high rate of vacancies, more than double the average of the city. Public spaces were equipped with limited and decaying infrastructure. And there was also partly some issues with reputation of the whole quarter. And then now, after 10 years of regeneration, what you can still see here is that what also citizens that were interviewed for the final evaluation of the regeneration master plan said is that the beauty vanishes towards the west of the city. So when we go back to this map you have here in the more eastern part, the city center part, Dortmund.U, and when you go west, there are still some issues that couldn't be solved by the regeneration master plan. But one of the best practice examples here from the regeneration is Café U-Jack. And this is what it looked before the regeneration, so back in 2010. This building was used as a restaurant, and it was vacant for several years. The look of the barricaded facade was not pleasant and rather typical for the vacancies in this problematic post-industrial area. And the main stakeholder in developing the meanwhile use was a project manager from 𝐻𝐿𝐷𝐿. I will talk about this organization later, who started negotiations with the owner of the building, who was also the owner of the restaurant. And the Italian landlord partly ran the restaurant himself for several years, but he also had a part-time job. And after closing down the restaurant, he had searched in vain for a tenant for 5 years. Some actors tried to establish other gastronomic offers, but failed for different reasons, because the look is not that pleasant. And then when you move towards the east of the city and Dortmund.U, they are much nicer places where you would go if you look for a restaurant. But then within the regeneration master plan, there was one program called the Agency for New Uses, which was a program that focused on creating temporary uses to fight vacancies in the area. And together with the Agency for New Uses, 𝐻𝐿𝐷𝐿 was able to implement a new use for this pizzeria, which then became the Café U-Jack. So after a couple of negotiating meetings and also the support of the Dortmund Job Center, it was possible to establish and implement the new use. So the U-Jack was built back as a restaurant starting in 2012. And then moving on in 2013 with other projects. But mainly what was being built is that today it contains a kitchen, a pizza oven, a refrigerated counter, and is again fully usable. The guest room is large enough to host events, meetings, and get-togethers for and with residents of the Union Quarter. And with the urban renewal of the city of Dortmund and the Dortmund Job Center, 𝐻𝐿𝐷𝐿 has now staged this U-Jack as a neighborhood cafe, which is also a social project with a cultural offer. One major project over the whole time was from 2015 to 2018, so more than 3 years, together with the so-called 𝐵𝐸MDO. This is the project Tandem Walking Together, Arriving Together. Rhianon, just one short thing, just please cut me off when my 10 minutes are over, thanks. And this project, Tandem Walking Together, Arriving Together, was a project that was partly funded by the Federal Office for Migration and Refugees as a culturally integrative neighborhood approach. And it was co-financed by also the regeneration process and the job center. So what was the aim of this project? It was about bringing people with and without a migration background in the district together in an action-oriented way, and to strengthen their community and culture of dialogue. individual approaches that have already been taken by both the organizations, so 𝐓𝐞𝐬𝐲 and 𝐸𝐞𝐬𝐲, were linked in order to develop a community supported by all residents and stakeholder group to create a sense of we in the district. And then the refurbishment of the restaurant was also supported by another project called the Perspectives Workshop, where participants learned to paint walls, to apply interior design. And this was also focused on building employability for refugees. There are mainly two target groups for the Café U-Jack. It's first of all the people who work there, and then it's the people who eat there. So the target group here are for the people who eat there are primarily the residents of the district, with a focus on socially disadvantaged residents, families, and children. The beverages include only non-alcoholic cold and warm drinks. And there are some offers like customer cards or the Dortmund Pass, which give people with low income the possibility to get dishes at reduced prices. So what is special here about this case and the organization of 𝐸𝐞𝐲 and this network of other organizations in Dortmund that work closely together? So 𝐸𝐞𝐲 is a certified member of the Professional Association of Private Employment Agencies and Personal Consultants. They are active in Dortmund for more than 25 years now, and they are actually located in the union quarters, such also as the VMDO or Union Gewerbehof. They provide professional services for better career prospects, and they use many networks to design innovative and new employability offers. They have a special unit called Vocational Perspectives, and this division supports people seeking advice and participants in integration and education measures and finding their future in training, school, and employment. And in addition to these social integrative offers, participants gain access to vocational competence mediation, job and training coaching. So the goal with all these measures that are also co-financed and supported by the job center is always to increase employability for certain groups. And they also have a special support center for refugees with a program called �RINT, which is focused on the qualification for language and integration mediators. So these mediators are specialists in intercultural communication. They support professionals in clinics, job centers, schools, and public authorities in their work with people with a migration background. So language and integration mediators are enablers for migrants to participate through mutual understanding. So it's about professional translations, transparencies, but also to enhance cultural proximity. 𝐸𝐞𝐲 also started a working group called Interim Users and Resilience over the period of the regeneration process. And that is also why they are not only responsible for the Café U-Jack implementation, but also for other meanwhile users that we talk about in our working paper and the ACS portfolio report. And they are part of several networks that serve the exchange of expertise and the development of innovative offers. And one of the very important networks is the so-called ISB, the Interest Group of Social Commercial Employment Initiatives. Or you could also translate it to Community of Interest for Socially Integrative Employment Initiatives. This network was already founded back in 1991 in Dortmund. It is a network of education and employment providers in Dortmund, and since 2002 they are a registered association. And the idea behind this that a regional network and cooperation in the field of labor and education policy increasingly plays a key role in the implementation of employment policy measures. And the integration into cooperation structures increases the chances of surviving in competition. So all these actors that you see here, they are employment providers, and they also signed the so-called Charta der Vielfalt, the Charter of Diversity, which is a corporate initiative in Germany to promote diversity in companies and institutions. And it is intended to promote the acceptance, appreciation, and integration of diversity in the world of work in Germany. So today, luckily, Café U-Jack survived Corona so far, and overall, early on, the costs for gastronomic products could be covered by the revenue from selling dishes. And additionally, there was some budget from the program Socially Integrative City, as well as from the district council. And the different funding streams were brought together, and it was possible for 𝐲𝐿𝐴𝐷𝐿 to finance the U-Jack project until today, while also implementing other projects. So you can now say that it became a permanent use, but still it is dependent on co-financing from the job center for the employment measures done there. So events that happen there are, for example, cooking classes, readings, or celebrations. And Café U-Jack has a Facebook page where they publish their weekly dish every week.
I have to wrap things up
Yeah.
soon, Eva. Thank you.
Sorry, do I have another minute or not?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So a small neighborhood cafe. So just to wrap up, what you can see here is in with this arrow here, that's where Café U-Jack is located. That's Rheinische Straße, and you cannot see it, but here below are the train tracks. Then we have the street, and then we have this large abandoned area, in industrial old site, and it's only nice during the daytime. That is what some interviewees say. So it's still a rather low income neighborhood, but with a lot of potential. And when I move to my last slide, I'll show you this potential, which is called Smart Rhino. This is the new smart city district. Here you have the cafe, and you will, or you can imagine that once this whole regeneration, which is about to start over the next years, once this will be built here, a large regeneration process like this will, of course, also have an effect on the neighborhood here, and there will probably be some kind of gentrification, but it will also enhance the quality of life for the people living here. And yeah, let's hope that Café U-Jack will survive with this with its offers. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Eva. Really interesting to hear more about Café U-Jack. I'm going to go straight over to Patrycja, who's going to tell us more about EC1 and New Center 𝐵𝐻.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to have this presentation done with the team from University of Łódź, Mariusz Granosik, and he will be presenting on behalf of himself and Anita Gulczyńska and Anna Jarkiewicz. So I will just give you a very short introduction into what is EC1 and the new city center, and then Mariusz will dive into the details of our meanwhile. So what you can see here is the already renewed EC1 power plant. It used to be a power plant built in 1906 and 1907. It's a beautiful Art Nouveau building that became useless, generally speaking, in the beginning of the 2000s, as the electricity plant didn't work anymore. And the building was actually given to the city. It was abandoned, and it was a seed for a very, I'd say, impressive and very bold new vision of creating a huge festival center. It was a bottom-up kind of idea. It didn't come to fruition, but actually it moved a lot of hearts and minds in the city to think about this place as a potential, not just a ruin that we have to take care of, but something that can be a real gem. And can I have the next slide, please? So the new city center, as you can see on your left in the map, the building of the EC1 is #1. And this is a public investment, and another big public investment that just was, the reason to transform the city was the Łódź Fabryczna railway station. It was another big public investment. So those two kind of started the whole remodeling of the center. And for the city, the main idea was to have a new center with a lot of business, with a lot of culture in it. But also one of the challenges was to link this new city center to the existing city center, the old 19th century city center that you can see on your right-hand side. So this kind of spawned into big area revitalization projects, the 8 that you can see on the map, and number 3 is directly next to the new city center. So the challenge for the city was to connect those two. But the other, I think the more important issue is how to bring in the local community. So we don't have just beautiful buildings with cultural offer that is sometimes not accessible for those people, but how to have them involved and how to make them co-authors and participants of this huge change. And we described several different temporary uses in the AC portfolio, when you can read through both on how we tried to stitch up the city and also how we are trying to bring local community into the picture. So I will give the floor to Mariusz. He will talk in particular about one of such activities.
Okay.
So
Mariusz, could you please change the slide? There will be no Mariusz now, but there will be
I can
Anita.
only tell that the floor is given to Anita.
Sorry. Okay. So Anita.
It's okay. Just it's a collective presentation. Thank you very much. I'm Anita, and together with Mariusz and Ania, we would like to tell you something about our temporary uses, about maybe not temporary uses which are focused on the concrete place, but about the concept of how to co-create place together with its users, and how to implement it into the whole urban regeneration processes. And we'll tell that on the example of projects with youth coming from disadvantaged neighborhoods, projects that are aiming to engage young residents of disadvantaged neighborhoods in placemaking. Mariusz, could you? And just to understand our concept, which is applicable in different places, we need to tell something about our identity. We are social pedagogues, and we treat urban regeneration in a very special way. For us, it's a process of permanent changes into social and educational environments in urban areas. And this project we would like to tell about, called Microscale Urban Revitalization Project, is the way how we try to change such an educational layer of urban settings in the process of urban regeneration. These projects are actually treated as a part of overall urban regeneration process, and they are low budget and strength-based projects of co-production of places by its users. We are focused mainly on dwellers, on residents of disadvantaged neighborhoods. And this co-creation is done together, of course, with professionals, academics, like it was our case, NGOs, activists, and city halls workers. These kind of projects aim at raising user voice and engagement in overall urban regeneration, and we think about its benefits as about long-term effects, just the growth of self-esteem and self-determination of residents, as well as their better social recognition and higher positioning in the city. Next, please. What we understand by this project is that this project aims at enhancing of engagement of disadvantaged groups in the city in placemaking. We will do that on the example of youth, but this methodology, I would say methodology, is applicable to other groups. And we were working with youth from disadvantaged urban neighborhoods, which we understand as places whose residents are affected by a particular configuration of processes of various nature, historical, structural, economic, institutional, and so on. And all of them favor both high risk of social exclusion of youth and limited power within various relations which they are part of. Next, please. And if we think in terms of disadvantaged neighborhoods, we think that this is a kind of a construct which is working in consciousness of citizens of each city, in which it has a very special, how to say that, identity. Just these are downtown neighborhoods inhabited till nowadays mainly by poor people who were settling down there during several waves of massive industrialization in Łódź history. And they are components of, I would say, enclaves of poverty. This is the notion introduced into our language of description of Łódź poverty by sociologists. And they are actually clusters of many social problems. Thanks to urban revitalization, these enclaves of poverty are developed now into archipelago of Łódź poverty. So the situation is rapidly changing. Next, please. And in these disadvantaged neighborhoods, which are how to say that, a very important part of our city down core, youth has a very difficult situation as they are, how to say, discriminated in urban regeneration. This is our experience from our research. They are discriminated on the basis of at least three features. First of all, age. There is still a kind of habit to treat children and youth as not partners. So generally in each social changes, urban changes, children are treated like subjected to the act of adults who are taking care for their own good. And next trait, discriminative, is just a social class. They generally come from families who don't recognize the dominant neoliberal system of values, and just they are quite weak in middle class ways of communication. So they generally don't trust institutions, they are not open to discuss, and they are sometimes not partners in discussion. They don't feel themselves as partners in for instance, some participatory meetings. And there is a strong working discrimination factor as which is stereotype and prejudice over the hoodie culture. You can see here just our Łódź youth standing in the streets and how to say that, having a very special impression on passers-by. Okay. And taking into account that this group is somehow discriminated in the project of urban regeneration, we work out a kind of answer, I would say, or we are in the process of working it out, which is called micro-scale regeneration projects. Here we are thinking about regeneration of backyards because it is exemplified on youth experiences from these disadvantaged neighborhoods I took over. And it has 4 stages, but I will talk them over together with Mariusz on the example of one of neighborhood. Okay. And this is the neighborhood at just a place in the heart of the city. This is a quite of a small neighborhood with conditions of life and infrastructure, as you can see, a bit neglected and destroyed, and somehow it's typical for these neighborhoods who are awaiting in the queue for urban regeneration. Okay, the next slide. And when we are getting into such neighborhoods and trying to start cooperation with dwellers, with people, first of all, we are working over, or we are trying to change attitude of workers and us together with them, initiating regeneration projects. In the projects we were cooperating with both students and of course residents, and with some workers of our City Hall Revitalization unit. What is very important at this step 0 is just to make the project, change people attitudes to make them understandable and open to the place as it speaks for itself. It's very important to understand the place, the meanings of the place which are ascribed to it by its users. It's very important to work over suspension of what is taken for granted. Sometimes our ignorance, our knowledge, our approaches to architecture or image of the territory, which is good for residents. We learned from experience that sometimes it's very important just to keep the atmosphere of the place, just to take care of its identity as it was before our intervention, then just to then to rebuild the place, just to give it a new go. And then there is a step 1, which is working on the contact and social relations. And here we try to become friends, I would say. This is the way how we try to make people cooperate in some activities for change, and how to make people engage in the process of changes co-designed and co-produced by them. What is very important for us is just to orient them on preserving and disseminating tradition or selected elements of the local culture, and how it is further done. Mariusz will tell further. Thank you.
Okay, I will continue. I'm fully conscious the time pressure, so I will try to do in few words exactly. So when we are open enough to look differently at social reality, we can start the interpretive diagnosis. I mean, the understanding of the reality from the perspective of residents, especially young residents. And from that perspective, we can easily find that they are experts. I mean, they are experts by experience. And from their perspective, the space has different levels. For example, it can be reconstructed public space, that is the space outside the backyard, that is community space, the backyard, also personal, their homes or flats, But what is very important in the context of education or socialization is the secret places that are hidden in the backyard and outside also. If you read the book Secret Garden, you can feel the atmosphere and how important it is in the process of development. So the social worlds of neighborhood needs to be reconstructed, needs to be understood to start any action. And very important part of that is recognizing the symbols, narration of local culture, sets of values that are very often quite different than our values. Just to give you an example of this local symbol is the cat you can see here. I don't know how to tell it in English. The cat is, I don't know, bricked up or plastered. The cat is in the wall, and it's many legends. What happened there? No one knows what is true, but the cat is a symbol of the backyard. And when colleagues or other visitors come to the backyard, the cat is first place that is shown them. Also below you can see these secret places. I mean the places where young people can hide and can manage the space without any adult control. And you can also see the map because we ask them to show us the space from their perspective. Maybe it's not time to describe it very detailed way, but not only internal world is necessary to understand the reality. Also what we need to know is the external conditions, external resources, external possibilities, because there are some important factors that influence the life in the neighborhoods. The external conditions is, for example, organizations or institutions being nearby, labor market, and many other economical factors, but also the history of the place. And let me look a bit into the history of the place. I show it on a very minor example. The concept of how the history can be an integration project. History can be understood from two perspectives, more objective one, I mean, the history that is in documents, but also as an oral history. So any place has own history that is no written anywhere. So we find that it would be nice to connect young people and older people in the topic of history. And young residents can, for example, interview older neighbors about the history. And because the history is about their families, their parents, the places they recognize, they feel a part of the heritage of the place. On the other hand, older people feel important because they are the only one who know the history, who know the past. But also objective history can be reconstructed. What we find in our diagnosis was that one of the neighbor is conducting a blog on Facebook about the history of the place. You can see the screen taken from this blog, and he reconstructs the interesting historical facts connected to the place. For example, the place, the street, the name of the street is Nawrot, and the name of the vlog is Nawrot, ending story. For example, is a building where famous Polish sportsmen were trained at the beginning of 20th century. And it is inspiring for young people to continue the tradition. Of course, it is many possibilities how the project can be continued. It can be some kind of urban games or city games. It can be photos of arts exhibition, also escape backyard, what we find as an alternative to escape rooms. But it is revitalizing their memories about the past. So the next step is co-production of the action. I will not focus on all stages, you can read that, but what I find very important is that it is a possibility to integrate the community. When young people propose some changes into their backyard, we often ask them who would support you, so who would support them in the neighborhood. I mean, parents, neighbors, other people. And that way they collect people around the project. So it was not only young people engaged in that, but almost all generations. And what is crucial here is responsibility. If we start the process, if we start the project, at least one proposal needs to be implemented. Not necessarily the biggest one, maybe the smallest, but anyway, one should be implemented.
Marius, could we wrap it up soon, please?
Yes. Just few pictures now, the secret place, and now how the secret place can be transformed in cooperation with some architectures. And maybe I skipped the last, it is art-based project that can supplement it also, but I understand that other people is waiting. So just maybe at the end, only about disseminating the action, because our focus is not only put on the young people, but also on the rest of society. The rest of the city needs to know that something interesting is happening there. So we organized the conference to share the experiences of young people. Thank you very much for your attention, and sorry for being a bit late.
No, don't worry. Thank you. Thank you, Anita, Marius, and Patrycja. Really interesting to hear more about your project. And over to Edward from Pali Pali, talking about CU Brussels.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm going to talk to you about a project which is in Brussels. So I'm going to try to keep it in time. So the project we run, we're going to have a quick video here to see the size, the specificity of our project is that it's one project, but it's the size of a neighborhood. So it's more than 45,000 square meters located in a city center in Brussels. And since today the topic is about partnership, what's interesting about it is that we have a necessity to have lots of partnership to have the project going. So the image you see was a trailer we did just in the beginning before we started the project. But now, as you can see, there are many which have changed because of the project. So CU right now is the largest temporary occupation of Belgium. Like I said, it's 45,000 square meters. It's probably one of the biggest in Europe, actually. And it started in April 2019, and it's gonna finish in summer 2022. So for us, it was quite short. In the beginning, we should have closed in 2021, and we had an extension because the project is considered a bit of a success. The aim of the project is mostly sustainability and education, and it's located in a former barracks. So here you can see the old neighborhood buildings, which are our occupation. We run and we operate all the buildings you see in the screen. That's 15 or 16 buildings with different typology. And after us, there's going to be a university. There's going to be student accommodation, family housing, local stores, a cinema, and a bio market, which is going to last as well. So our mission was trying to prefigurate all those activities. And since there's a lot of them and a lot of stakeholders, it implied a lot of partnerships as well. So obviously, running a place which is public owned, but with a huge stakeholders as a university is quite a challenge because you need to make them talk together all the time, which they are not used to. So, like I said, the place. So that's how it is now. We built a velodrome in the middle. We have a 𝐮𝐻𝐽𝐻𝐬𝐻, so a bar which open as well. So the structure is that it's owned by the Brussels region. So it's public owned and it's managed by us, and it's services we provide to the region. So there was a call for tender that we won, asking for a price for our services, and now we are paid to run all the premises. We have mostly two big partners apart from the owners, which are one, the universities, because you have the two biggest universities of the country based on site, just all around us, and 𝐓𝐞𝐬𝐢, which is the city, the neighbor where the place is. The other stakeholders we have obviously are the residents, because since we are quite a big project, it's a community by itself. The neighbors, which are second community, and the visitors as well, because since we are a bit attractive, then you have people coming from outside the neighbor to visit the place. So how did we concretely, being concrete, how did we do it? So first we made sure that the place was welcoming. So we designed a very attractive open space for the neighborhood, which to make it local, we try to make it inclusive, and we had a large program. I'll get back to that in a few minutes, with the neighbor to see what would they needed, and we designed the program based on what the neighbor needed. So we didn't try to come with a specific project in mind, but we made a huge participation project with the neighbor, and based on that, we designed the project. So it's really a co-creation, which started in the beginning with this big velodrome you see in the beginning, and also the cinema. But right now, everything we do on the project, everything we do in CU is co-created with the community of neighbors and users, which are the people who are occupying the ground. We have one value, which is trying to be a lab for sustainable development. So everything we do is always related to this value. So we try to have a coherent project. So right now within CU, you have more than 100 projects, 111, if I'm right, as of today. So it's really a community by itself. We have agoras to regroup them. We have decision process to try to build project with them. So we really had to design our own small democracy kind of to help them participate to the project. They come from many different backgrounds. Some are associative, some are completely non-profit, some are economic. It's companies in the sustainable area, but still economic. Some are cultural, and some are coming from the education background. So if you take just a few projects, you have, of course, a cinema, you have a bike repair, you have a velodrome, you have a bakery on site, you have flower shops, you have kids cafe, you have artist residencies. So you have many, many different activities. And we decided to regroup them in 7 different small neighborhoods within CU, so they could work more together. So in terms of partnership, we try to define the methodology, because if you have a big project like that, it's great because you have so many things happening organically and it can work like that. But for us, it meant that we needed to have a methodology to encourage the partnerships and to encourage the outreach. So we designed a specific program called 𝐓𝐞𝐦𝐻𝐿, because it's like CU. And 𝐓𝐞𝐦𝐻𝐿, we have 2 persons which are full-time dedicated to this program. So what they do is that they try to animate a community, which is not only the people within the project, because that's kind of easy, but really the people outside of the project, so mostly the neighbors. So they assembled a community of neighbors. They try to identify in our programmation, which is welcoming for the neighbors, and we communicate specifically on these activities for the neighbors. We have a specific budget to co-create project with them. So now it's almost half of our budget for programming is dedicated to the 𝐴𝐸 program. And we try to involve them in the actual program, but also the future projects. That means right now we have a company who is coming to design the public space for the project after the temporary occupation. And they are using our 𝐴𝐸 program to participate in this project as well. So 𝐴𝐸 program in terms of outreach is really the core center of what we do in CU. And having a temporary occupation by itself would never have been enough to have this outreach and to have this neighbor-friendly program. So really had to design something which is very specific, very identified with specific people working on it. And that's what makes it work. So now, thanks to this program, we have more than, every year, we have more than 350 activities or events organized on the site. So, and that's COVID time. So normally we would have, I think, more events than days within a year of events. We welcome more than 125,000 visitors a year. We obviously have a lot of cultural activities like music, art festival, exhibitions. But we also have lots of markets, which are very useful for the neighborhoods, like bio market, vintage market, plant markets, makers fair, beer market. We have many of those concepts we use because we know it's easier to bring people together along those forms. So we're not only specific minded on the cultural sector. The second big thing we do, apart from the program, is that we design the spaces because we have lots of space. So we really try to have a space design which is welcoming to outreach. That means a large diversity of buildings, of space, some which are specifically designed for public time, some which are designed for families, some which are designed for workshops, some which are designed for exhibition, etc., etc. So we try to add the largest diversity of spaces. So we always have a space which answers to a need of a program. That means you can go to a cafe, you can go to something which would be more like a concert hall or a club. You can go to just outside because we have the chance to have a large outside space. But the 𝐴𝐸 program and the space design is really something we focus on. So just to present a few space within the project, one would be the big hall, which is a very versatile place where we can it's empty by design, and we just fill it with different projects all the time so we can have this versatility of usage. The capacity is 400 people now, but it's more like 800 people when it's open. We have smaller space which are under indoor spaces which we can regroup, which we can close, which we can extend. That means we go from the smaller capacities, 120, to more like 200, 300 capacities. And those spaces are available for our projects. I mean, it's something you can rent them if you're outside of CU, but if you are within CU, you can access them and make your own projects. So it's kind of a tool which is easier for outreach. And obviously, we large emphasis on public space. And the biggest and more important thing we did is to design a velodrome inside the public space that you can see on screen. The velodrome is really what helped us a lot to have a large outreach, because with the velodrome, we can have some families with the kids who learn to bike. You can have more like competitions. We organize open air cinema there. We organize concerts. We have barbecues. So it's really something of a tool we use for so many things, which really helped us doing it. It's also a place where we do a lot of partnership with sports association, cultural association. That's really the center of the place, and that's how people recognize our place as well. That's because we designed, we try to design the best open public space possible. One of the last places we have also is a cinema. It's always great to have one. It's also more indoor and conference ready. The capacity is 300 people. It's more than 300 people. And a bit like your, sorry, it's a bit like your small spaces. We also have a lot of very small spaces on the site, spaces which are less than 50 or less than 100 people, where people can come and organize very small events, because sometimes we need big events and bigger audiences, but sometimes we have smaller events. So that's really that diversity, which makes CU such a nice project to run. And in terms of partnerships, we really think it's a very good combination of private and public partnership. And we really think the success of it came from this private and public partnership, from the 𝐵𝐞𝐻 program, which is very successful in terms of trying to focus on addressing specific projects for the neighbors, and also having a space which is obviously very attractive and which allows us to define a great variety of events. And this is it. Yeah,
Thank you so much, Edward. Really fascinating to see the CU Brussels project. I hadn't heard of it before, so thank you. So we have maybe a few minutes for questions, I think. I know that we're over, but it's also lunch next, so maybe let's say just
I can do the few questions for
yeah, 5 minutes for questions.
So the projects on a daily basis. So we have a team which is very small. It's only for everything you see. It's 5 people. So production, communication, project management, and 𝐵𝐞𝐻 2 people. And the rest we do it in partnerships. That means we try to empower the C users on the site. We give them budgets and they participate to the programming. So it's really something we try to be, our team is quite very efficient and very small. And then we try to empower the C users on the site to make more out of it. Method of mappings you need. So the mapping we needed, we did a survey, a big survey. So in the beginning when we started, we did 2 things. We did a huge survey to try to map the neighborhood. And the second thing is that we did a call for volunteers. And now we have lots of volunteers from the neighborhoods participating to the community, and they help us programming the place. And last questions is which tool of processes for co-designing? So it's very different from without COVID or with COVID. With COVID, we used this community. We used tools like Miro, for example. So we did some visualizing tool to organize the space, the project, vote for projects, allocate the budgets, etc. Obviously, if it would have been in real life, it would have been much easier. So sorry, I tried to answer it a bit fast. So
no, that's great. Thank you, Edward. And I'm just a question for the 𝐻𝐻 team. How did the opportunity to work specifically with youth come up, and how was the project funded?
I don't know who will answer. Maybe I can answer a bit. So it's a many histories behind this, how the opportunity appeared. One of that is that Anita was a neighbor in such a backyard, so she knows the backyard life very well and also recognized some troubles there, so it focused us on that aspect. But if we consider, I don't know, shorter answer, how we came into the backyard, for example, and recognize the young people problem, I can show it on an example. We just come there and look around, and of course we didn't expect a warm welcome, and very often people just asking us, what are you doing here? Who invited you here? But when you look around and find something positive, you can be welcomed more in more open way. For example, I found a woman who feed cats and just talked to her. That's great that you feed animals here. Probably there is not many people doing that. And she answered, yes, I'm the only one. So I continue, but there are children around you. Would you like to show those young people what you are doing to teach them how to fit. And it's a way how that kind of project is started. And considering the money, the project costs nothing, because as I mentioned, we try to build the action on the basis of local strengths. So there is not a big money involved in the project. So some people work voluntary, for example, architectures support us voluntary. Considering a bigger action like graffitis, we applied for money to external funds, external foundations, but unfortunately not successfully. So we still don't have that money, but money is not a crucial point here. To some extent, I could sum up that less money is better, because money is also making the community dependent on external sources.
Thank you, Mariusz. That's really interesting. And just a comment for myself, I think the photographs you showed were also really beautiful. And I wonder if that was a part of the process, or that was a collaboration, or was that just kind of, yeah, photographing your process?
Actually, it was the part. Actually, it was a part of a research project we had with youth in disadvantaged neighborhoods.
Thank you. And the final question to Eva from Dario, who's asking about the I think you called it the Agency for New Uses, and how that worked, and whether the agency was an intermediary or it also supported through funding and other types of support.
Yes, thank you. So actually, the Agency for New Uses was the name of one of the interventions within the Regeneration Master Plan. So it was actually a program that lasted for 3 years, 2011 until 2014. And it was about 200,000 euros commissioned to 2 agencies or consultancies. And the aim was that these consultancies should contact all the property owners within the area and get them to start thinking about investing in their own properties. And they helped with the vacancy management and also finding new uses for vacant properties.
That's great. Thank you, Eva. Do we have any more questions? I think maybe we should wrap up for lunch. Thank you so much to everyone who's spoken.